Quad 66. Finally, releasing the WarPig Zero canopy. So this is a kind of frame rail style canopy that clips on to the standard WarPig Zero frames. And it's specifically designed to work with the HDZero system, in particular the Whoop bundle with the Nano Lite camera. I'll talk about that camera a little bit more and why this is the one that's recommended. It will also work with some modification while drilling the 90 frame per second camera, but it is going to stick out. To get a canopy for that camera that will give protection, it's going to just take a totally different canopy design with much more material out front. So before we get into the details of the frame though, I want to set some expectations, and in particular, the expectation that if you buy this frame, please expect that you're going to have to do some hand finishing to get this fitment correct. So you can see here that the bottom of the rail has kind of a C shape and it clamps onto that base. And you might get a frame where the interface is perfect off the bat, but because of the variability in the thickness of the frames and also the tolerances with machining this out, you are more likely, well, I shouldn't say more likely, but you're very likely to potentially get one that's too loose. And so this is an example here where what you're going to see is, if it focuses, so do you see how that is, maybe it's hard to see, there you go, you can see it there, the way it is moving up and down. That vertical movement, we can't take that out. The wobble is actually fine. The wiggling back and forth, the way this frame gets pulled together, the wiggling goes away. But that vertical movement, you do have to get rid of that. Fortunately, I found that it's actually not that hard to get rid of the wiggling by using a little bit of CA glue. This is some tire glue for RC cars, but it's just CA. And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and take your little clip, and you want to put a little bit of glue on the bottom and a little glue on the top, let that dry, and you want to do that both on the front and the back. And then once you do that, you'll go from a wiggly thing like that to something that fits quite a bit better. And so we still have a little wiggle here, but that vertical motion is fine. And this was just a little bit of glue. You might have to repeat the gluing more than once. But once you get it, that CA is pretty durable, and unless you're taking this apart and putting it back together multiple times, it should be a one-time thing to adjust, and then you're good to go. The other possibility is, instead of it being too loose, maybe it's too tight. And so if it's too tight, the adjustment you're going to have to do is the opposite. You're going to have to make a little bit more room. To do that, and that's probably even a little easier. And so I just use these little hobby files, crafting files or whatever they are. You can use some sandpaper, but what you want to do is just take a tiny little bit of material off of either the top or the bottom, just pick one, it doesn't matter which, and do it tiny little bit at a time, because there is not very much carbon fiber. It's easy to take it off. And you want to take just a tiny bit off and move it down, and then that'll loosen up so that you can get the clips on if they're too snug. In the final production version, there's going to be one little change where these holes are going to be smaller. We're going down to a smaller cutter to minimize how much material is taken out there. That's not going to change the fitment, but it's just if you notice that yours look a little different, that's why. All right, so in terms of what comes in the kit, so in your kit, you're going to get a pair of rails for the canopy. You're going to get a couple of clips, one that goes on the back, one that goes on the front. You're going to get some steel hardware, some steel M2 screws that go with the front and back, some nylon nuts to lock those down, and then you're going to get a standoff that goes in back with 2 more steel screws to lock that part down. And then the last thing you're going to get to go with the Nano Lite camera is these teeny tiny little M1.4 screws, and these are just a little bit longer so that they work with the increased thickness. The screws that come with the HDZero system are extremely short, and so it doesn't work with this thicker, it just doesn't reach. All right, so in terms of how does this go together, or let's give you a weight on it. So the weight for the entire canopy, so we're going to put 2 frame rails on there. 2 clips. And so just for the carbon fiber pieces, we are at 3.3 grams. And we're going to keep adding our stuff on there. So then we're going to use screw for the front, screw from the back, the standoff, and the 2 screws for the standoff. So our all-up weight on that canopy cage is 4.14 grams. So that's the weight you're looking at if you are interested in this canopy. Compare that with, you know, whatever other options you have. One last thing that does come with the kit is going to be some M2 screws for the flight controller and the VTX, and they're specifically kind of a nice length for this setup here, where you can see there's not a lot of excess sticking out the top. So it's enough so that you have some variability in terms of if you have thicker, thicker nuts or something like that, or thicker gummies, but not so thick that not so long that you're wasting a bunch of weight. All right. In terms of how does this go together? This is another setting expectations thing. So this is a little bit fiddly of a build. So first you slide both of the frame rails on. And then you want to kind of eyeball it so that it's about lined up. And I've cheated here where I've already lined this one up just because I'm trying to do this on camera, and it's just hard with the camera in my face to get it on there. So once you have those frame rails on there and fairly well lined up, then you want to go ahead and grab your clip and your M2 screw. Get those in there. And so then I do the front one first, and so it just slides on. And you got to get that screw to line up with the hole in the frame. And then once you have that through, let's see if I can get that, yeah, it's through. That kind of locks everything together, and once you have that through, it makes it a lot less fiddly and it makes it easier to deal with. And then you just throw a little nylon M2 screw underneath, screw that in, and now everything is going to be, the rest of it is much easier. That's the harder part, getting that first one. So then next thing I do is the back clip, and same thing where I just go ahead and take my clip, grab one of these M2 screws, and just slide that in place, and get that screw through so you can see where the screw comes through that hole on the frame. And so those are the holes that are there if you're mounting the frame in a diamond orientation, which obviously we're just not doing on this particular setup. And so I'm just going to lock this down with another nylon nut. So screwing on. Yeah. So now we've got it pretty much kind of in place. It's not going to move around. Now it's going to be easy to work with. The next step I go is I go ahead and put the camera in. And the reason I put the camera in next is because the last step is putting in the standoff back here, and that pinches and squeezes everything together and really locks down the camera. So what you can see here, hopefully, is that this carbon fiber is actually bending backwards and pinching in, and that puts a lot of pressure on the camera from the outside, which helps you really kind of lock it into place, and it makes the whole structure really, really rigid. So this whole thing, it really, if once you get it fitted up right, it just really does not move. It's a really solid structure. And so that's kind of one of the nice features about it. So once you get the camera in, then the last part you're going to do is lock it all down with the standoff. And so I put in these steel screws. If you're trying to save weight, this is an area where you might be able to get away with something lighter than steel, like nylon or aluminum screws. But for purposes of releasing a kit, I thought it made the most sense to just go ahead and put the steel in there. So we get that going in there. And then the last screw. And this is the one that really, so you should be able to see here how, let's see, when the camera's in here, this will actually kind of pull apart like that. And so when we go ahead and put in that last screw, when the camera's in here, this will actually, as you screw that down, it's going to actually bend the carbon fiber. And that bend really creates a lot of tension and really makes it kind of a snug fit overall. And so that's how you build it up. Other things with the build is that, yes, these have to be built up square. That's the only way to get that camera tucked in close enough. If you go diamond, you're really having to go to larger frames. And so I don't really think that makes sense for what we're trying to accomplish here with the WarPig frames. So in terms of this build, why did I say we're doing specifically the Whoop Lite camera? The two cameras I think that make sense are that Nano Lite camera or the 90 frames per second camera, specifically with the upgraded lens. This is a big old upgraded lens on here, because I don't think that the regular Nano camera with a good lens on it, it really doesn't do much. I don't think that the difference in lens for the type of flying that the WarPig's intended for, more tight end kind of stuff, bashing it around, I don't think the image quality is enough to justify the weight of this big old lens and all the extra size and stuff that you need. So if you're going for the kind of flight performance build, I recommend that Nano Lite camera. On the other hand, if you just absolutely love the smoothness of 90 frames per second, and it's real, that smoothness is real, I've fully convinced about it. I'm not sure if I need it, but if you need it, then you're going to jump up to this camera anyways. And yes, you can get it to work on this frame with this canopy, but really what we need to do is, you can see, we just need to design a second canopy, and I'll get working on that. But I wanted to get this one launched for you. So if you were interested in the HDZero, you can go ahead and now buy the kit and get this built up. This will be up on CNCdrones, and there will be options there. So when you're buying this, if you already have the frame, make sure you're getting the right canopy for the frame. So this clip right here is specific to either the 3mm or 4mm thickness, and so this one you can see is a 4mm. So if you got a 4mm frame, get the 4mm one. If you have the 3mm frame, then go ahead, get yourself the smaller ones. It'll be listed on there, but make sure you match up your canopy to the frame. All right, that's what I got on the WarPig Zero. Hopefully some of you guys like this and build it up. Let me know what you think. All right, until next time, cheers.